Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another reaction video. This video was suggested by a Patreon member. If you want to suggest videos directly to me, or if you want to support future projects, the link of the Patreon is going to be in the description below. Go look at yourself if you like it. You can subscribe there. Okay, so today we have the video, The Presidential Assassination Nobody Talks About. The one assassination that's, widely known, I would say, in Europe is the JFK one. And I would say also to a lesser degree, but also very well known, is also Abraham Lincoln. Because of the thumbnail, he said, in the thumbnails there's something like Garfield. So it's probably about President Garfield, who was a Republican. Well, I don't know that much about him, and I didn't even know that he was assassinated. I know that he was a Republican and that he fought for the Union during the Civil War. Anything else? And that he was in the 1890s, 1880s, something like that. So I'm interested how Sam Onella is going to paint this or present it, and yeah, let's see what he has for us. As always, the link to the original video is going to be in the description below. Go give him a view and a like.
Video is sponsored by Skillshare.
Grab your coffee.
Hey kids,
or
John
tea.
Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, Hitler, all people who gained massive notoriety by killing one of history's famous leaders. But there are two Americans who committed an equally heinous crime as these three, yet their stories are seldom remembered, mostly because nobody really cares about the presidents they killed. Originally I was going to talk about both of them, but the video ended up being way too long, so today we'll just stick to, this one I guess. Charles J. Guiteau was a pretty silly guy, and to understand how a guy could be so silly, you gotta start with his youth. Guiteau was born in Freeport, Illinois in 1841. His mom had postpartum psychosis and died when he was 7, alongside 3 of his 5 siblings. His dad, meanwhile, was mega religious.
Which was a common thing during back then. And interesting thing. Why did people, children in a family back then in the 19th century, but also before that, why did people have a lot of children? It's because children were seen as an asset. So if you had more children, they could provide you in the future when you're too old to run the fields and to work. So they would provide you when you get older and you're not more able to work. But they also conceived more children because back then it was way more common for a child to die during the birth, or after in the first year after it was born. And in some instances in Europe, children weren't even given a name back then in their first year while they were alive, because nobody knew if they were going to survive the first year. So yeah, interesting. And that's probably the guy who's going to assassinate Garfield. I don't know.
Died when he was 7, alongside 3 of his 5 siblings. His dad, meanwhile, was mega religious and made a big point out of instilling those values in his son, often physically. This influence molded Charles into a boy who sought nothing short of total approval from others, and who would react very harshly to any criticism levied upon him. As a teen, he moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan for high school. He tried to get into the University of Michigan, but he goofed on the entrance exam. So he did what anyone in his situation would do and said, well, so much for real life, I'm gonna join a commune. Specifically, he became part of the Oneida community in New York. In some aspects, this place was a pretty run-of-the-mill religious fellowship, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, yada yada. But there were a couple of things that made it special. First off, they followed a doctrine known as Christian perfectionism, whereby everyone would strive to live their lives completely free of sin and reach a divine level of perfection while still on earth. Now this isn't really unique to Oneida, but whereas most people would achieve this through staunch discipline and careful self-reflection, these guys would just get together and take turns roasting the shit out of each and every member over any minute flaw they could.
Already in a video, I think it was the video about Timothy Dexter, but I'm not sure. But already in a video.
Possibly have. Real great for the psyche. They also practiced what was basically an early form of eugenics, where aspiring parents would have to submit an application and be judged by the committee on their moral and spiritual fortitude. If they were allowed to mate, children would be separated from the mom about a year after birth and raised communally in the children's wing. After all, wouldn't want any of those hopelessly flawed toddlers to think they're deserving of any affection whatsoever. Oneida also believed in what they
That kind of reminds me of the Third Reich, where they also separated, like the Aryan children with the special Germanic genes, and then they wanted to raise them as, like perfect Germans. It's kind of creepy that it already started back then in the US.
To think they're
or that it was also in the US happening.
deserving of any affection whatsoever. Oneida also believed in what they called free love, which meant that anyone could bang anyone at any time, as long as they kept it hetero, and exclusive relationships of any kind were actually frowned upon, which seems like kind of a weird habit for people trying to 100% FC this whole Christianity thing, but whatever. But wait, you're saying, how can you have selective breeding at the same time as extremely unselective breeding? Aha! See, that's where male continence comes in. Under this rule, a pair could go at it for as long as they wanted, with the caveat that the dude's not allowed to nut, pull out or otherwise. That way, it's not a sin. After all, as the Bible says, if the dick don't spit, you must acquit. Paradoxically, this After all, as the Bible says, if the dick don't spit, you must acquit. Paradoxically, no such rule existed for the women. In fact, not only did the commune believe in female orgasms, they actually
what can I say to that? I mean, come on.
prioritize them, which is like unheard of in the 19th century. They'd even have the middle-aged women of the society train the teen boys in the art of holding in the old pelvic sneeze. That way, there wouldn't be any chance of conception in case the guy goofs up his first few tries. So anyway, young Gito joins this whole thing, and endured countless blows to his massive yet fragile ego, thinking he's at least gonna get a piece of this communal action. Except, the criticism towards him wasn't just a formality like it was for others. Everyone there genuinely fucking hated him, on account of the fact that he was a raving neurotic narcissist. He never caught a single piece of this allegedly free love, and after a while, they all started calling him Charles Get Out in the hopes that he'd leave. This is real. And after 5 long
Get Out!
years of this abuse, Guiteau finally got the hint and moved to New Jersey. He tried starting a newspaper themed around the Oneida religion called the Daily Theocrat, except nobody cared, so that failed. He went back to Oneida and tried to sue the place in order to get back pay for all his voluntary unpaid labor while living there, but apparently I'm mad butthurt isn't a valid reason for prosecution, so that went nowhere. Finally he said, well, when your devotion to God has failed you, there's only one path in life left. Time to become a lawyer. He managed to pass an examination to gain admission to the Illinois bar, and subsequently joined a law firm in Chicago at the age of 27, where he met his soon-to-be wife, one Annie Bunn. Of course, Guiteau never really got to be a lawyer. He only argued in one actual court case. Most of his time was spent doing bill collecting.
I'm interested. I never, researched about it, but I'm kind of interested how were lawyers seen throughout history? Because, today they kind of get, I wouldn't say a bad rep, but not, they don't get a positive rep or positive, aura or stories about them. They're mostly negative. But I think that in the past, as far as I would, read and look up things, they were mostly considered, upper class, well-standing, gentlemen, and so on. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just thinking out loud. But I'm kind of interested how it works. If somebody has some information, let me know.
For random clients. This job gave him insight into how debtors think and operate, which allowed him to turn into quite the con man, dodging bills whenever and wherever he saw the opportunity. Even on the job, he'd frequently charge exorbitant contingency fees after the fact, upwards of 75%. And sometimes he'd just keep it all and completely ghost his clients. After all, what are they gonna do? Send another bill collector? Well, it turns out they did, so Guiteau and his wife fled to New York. Here he ditched law and started getting into politics. Specifically, he wrote and delivered a speech in in favor of Horace Greeley, the 1872 Democratic presidential candidate, and he somehow got it in his head that if Greeley won, his campaign would be so greatly indebted to him that they'd fulfill his desires to be the Minister of Chile, as though a total rando like him could just, name a job and it would be his. In reality, the speech was an incoherent mess heard by next to no one, and Greeley lost by a landslide. As the years passed, Annie got real sick of living life on the run with a broke-ass bitch, and Charles was none too keen on her weighing him down either. But back in the day, you couldn't just divorce someone with...
If somebody has an info, let's say in this case, we all know that, in the US, people are, let the government stay as far as away from my life and everything that I do as possible. And back in the days, that was even more, the government wasn't that much involved if you compare it to today's standards. But I'm kind of interested, was the government efficient in catching, I don't know, people who broke the law and so on? Because every time when I hear a story of an American, dodging the taxes, robbing some bank or whatever, they just go to another city or another state and, and live there for 20 years until maybe, the federal government finds them. So I'm kind of interested if somebody has some information about how efficient the federal government was throughout the history of the US, because I'm really, really interested. Because in Europe, especially in the Habsburg monarchy, they, as far as I read, especially, I kind of dived deep into the topic of prostitution during the Habsburg monarchy. And, they knew where, in the 19th century, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, and they knew, who went in and out of the brothels, who was staying in the brothels, how many customers she had, when she left to visit home, when she left to go to, a supermarket and so on. So they were in Europe, as far as I know, the states that existed back then, they had, could have a tight grip on an individual also back then.
Willy-nilly, you needed a valid reason for it. So Charles concocted the brilliant scheme of banging a prostitute and then having her testify in court. The plan worked, with the pair successfully divorcing in 1874, and the only downside was syphilis. Whoops, Guiteau started dabbling in theology again around this time. He published a book called The Truth, which was almost entirely plagiarized directly from John Noyes, the founder of the Oneida community. But despite being a man of God, Guiteau was still very much a two-time varmint, and moved frequently in the dead of night to keep collectors off his tail. His brother caught wind of this and wrote him a letter basically saying, hey, maybe you should pay your bills now and then so you can be, a functioning member of society. To which Charles replied, and I quote, "Find $7 enclosed, stick it up your bunghole and wipe your nose on it, and that will remind you of the estimation in which you are held by Charles J. Guiteau." God damn. And to his own brother, the madman. Soon after he got arrested, bailed out by his sister, lived with her for a few months, attacked her with an axe, went to DC, rambled about religion to anyone who would listen, moved to Boston, got in a boat accident where everyone in his boat was fine, but everyone in the other one fucking died, took this as a sign from God, moved back to New York, and got back into politics in 1880, this time as a Republican. During this campaign, there were two main factions of Republicans, known as the Stalwarts and the Half-Breeds, which sounds like some Tolkien shit, wish we had names like that today. Now, Guiteau considered himself a stalwart, and in a similar vein to his 1872 venture, he wrote a speech to promote stalwart candidate Ulysses S. Grant, who was shooting for his third term. But before he got a chance to deliver the speech, one James A. Garfield took the candidacy completely out of nowhere, beating out both factions single-handedly. He was like, rats, how am I gonna get power handed to me now? So he literally just scribbled out all the references to Grant and replaced them with Garfield and was like, yep, that'll do it. He read this speech all of twice, along with handing out copies to the Republican National Committee. In reality, this really didn't accomplish much, but when Garfield managed to win the election, Guiteau was like, yes, that was entirely me. Garfield is in my supreme debt. As God is my witness, he shall make me a consulate in Vienna or Paris or someplace cool like that. He went to DC to await his inevitable appointment, but obviously nothing happened. So he started writing letters. A lot of letters. When that didn't work, he started actually stalking both Garfield and the Secretary of State, James Blaine.
That reminds me of the movie, oh my god, what's the movie called? when they're in prison, and then the one guy sends the letter to the state in the US to build up the library. Oh my god, and he like writes every week or every month a new letter until they finally go like, okay, just give them the funds to rebuild the library in the prison. What is it? Oh my god. Okay, I'm not gonna stall this video because of that. But you're going to know, and let me know in the comments, or let other people know in the comments what I'm talking about.
Intercepting them in hotel lobbies, just being like, oh, hey, yeah, it's me, the sole person responsible for your success. Say, how about a consulship? Alright, you'll get back to me, I get it. Whoa, haha, what a coincidence. Me again. How's that consulship coming? At first they simply ignored him, but eventually Blaine snapped, screaming, never speak to me again on the Paris consulship as long as you live. Damn you, Garfield! I sense a disturbance in the force. Maybe daylight savings just made Monday an hour longer. Wow, Garfield, that was quite the wisecrack. It's amazing how you manage to keep things fresh year after year. Burn in hell, beige dog. At this point, Guiteau completely renounced any faith in the current administration, and after a lifetime of clout chasing met only with disappointment, he decided his only option was straight up going postal. He convinced himself that it was now God's will to remove Garfield from this mortal plane in order to put his stalwart vice president, Chester Alan Arthur, into power. When he went to buy a revolver, he was given the choice between—
I was thinking that he literally meant that he's going to work at the post office. Okay.
Between a wood grip and an ivory grip. He went with the ivory one for no other reason than he thought it would look cooler in a museum, and on July 2nd, 1881, he ambushed Garfield at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station, shooting him twice in the back and mortally wounding him, all because he wouldn't give him a job. Garfield managed to hang on for 11 weeks before finally dying, which sounds like hell. Today's modern physicians actually believe that Garfield could have easily survived the incident if it weren't for doctors digging through him with unsanitized tools. Hey, modern medicine,
really?
Thanks for not being worse than literally no medicine. It means a lot. But that didn't stop.
Really? Although he's the president. So just imagine, because he is the president, so he's probably receiving a, like a special treatment from, like high-end, like doctors and everything, physicians and so on. So imagine how the treatment was for regular people or for poor people and so on during that time in the US. But not only in the US, like throughout the world. But it's kind of weird because, like what? The Civil War ended in 1865. And, with the Civil War, you had also Lincoln, who was assassinated. So another president. So I was actually, I'm actually confused that he kind of got to Garfield, to a president so close to be able to shoot him. Weren't there any bodyguards or I don't know, guards or something like that? Because after a presidential assassination, you would think that, like the security, the apparatus of the state and so on would take possible future assassination attempts seriously. So I'm kind of confused.
Guiteau from being formally charged with murder. And that's exactly what he wanted. Matter of fact, Guiteau was over the moon, taking his new nationwide infamy as the fame he always deserved. His trial was just bananas, with Guiteau hurling obscenities at just about everyone there, including his own defense team, and formatting his testimony as an epic poem which he recited in full. He even dictated an autobiography to the New York Herald, which, get this, he ended with a personal ad for a nice Christian lady under 30 years of age. What a baller. When the guilty verdict was read, he called everybody there low consummate jackasses, and on June 30th, 1882, Guiteau smiled and waved to his adoring fans as he was walked to the gallows, where he recited a repetitive, deranged poem he wrote that morning, which was performed in a high-pitched falsetto voice, since it was written in the point of view of a child. He asked for a full orchestra to play during the reading, which I don't have to tell you that went nowhere, and promptly thereafter, he was hung. When the gallows dropped, people were probably like, ugh, Jesus, it's finally over. I just came here for a nice little execution. They subject me to all that? Oh, my mom.
So he really wanted to go into history with all, this pistol could go into a museum. So maybe he thought that also his poems are going to be, you know, like recited in the future because he, you know, like, I don't know, was an icon of resistance or something like that. If you know any poems of him or anything else interesting about him, I would really appreciate it if you would let me know in the comments below.
Funny back, frankly. So it just goes to show, you can't always get what you want. Unless that thing is getting everyone to hate you, that's extraordinarily easy. But for everything else, you're gonna need a combination of hard work and know-how. While the former must ultimately come from within, there's plenty of resources out there for the latter. The best of which is a seldom talked about little startup called Skillshare. Sponsor time. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 25,000 classes in design, business, technology, and
I'm gonna let it roll, but I'm gonna put a volume down as usual. Okay, I'm sorry that I cannot give a much of input to this, but as always, Salmonella makes great videos. As I said, the link to the original video is going to be in the description below. Give him a view and a like, because he definitely deserves. But the thing is, as I said, I would probably put a bet that most of the Europeans, if you talk about US presidential assassinations, would say, you know, like immediately JFK, because it's in the same century. So you know, like you have still videos on YouTube at that particular moment when the assassination happened. So, you know, like it's, I wouldn't say fresh in people's minds, but people, you know, like can visualize that. And the second presidential assassination that I would say that the Europeans know or maybe know is Abraham Lincoln. But this one, Garfield, I really didn't know. I didn't know. As I said, I knew only that Garfield was a Republican president and that he also served during the Civil War. He fought for the Union. But as always, you know, like the video is great. Props to Salmonella. Once again, give him a view and a like. If you want to support this channel, if you want to suggest videos directly to me or support future projects like the ones in Croatia and in Austria, just go to the Patreon page and you can sign up there. Until the next video, peace out.